Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending our monthly Be Ready Academy training class. Tonight's class is going to talk to you about becoming a beekeeper. What's involved with becoming a beekeeper, what kind of equipment's necessary, a little bit about the bees and how you can raise them. So be prepared to take lots of notes or just watch this video that we're going to post on our website in a couple of days. As announcements go, just wanted to let everybody know that we do have a few more battery banks, solar panels that are for sale right now. A few more stun guns that are still left over. All the rest of the stuff that I had sold out because we went to a trade show a couple weeks ago for churches on helping churches prepare for an active shooter situation. And so security teams needed communication tools and all that kind of stuff, so we sold a lot of stuff to those guys. And so I have to go restock. And thank goodness Trump negotiated better terms with China. So now the prices, so I waited until it, yeah, we would have gotten hosed if I had ordered last week. So take advantage of that. I think what else? Maria, is there any other announcements that I need to announce on? Thanks to everybody who went to Maria's canning class. Maria, how many did you have show up at your canning class? 13 people showed up at her house. Fantastic, a number. So we're going to have some more classes. We're going to be meeting as a presidency later this week to talk about the future 6 months worth of classes that we want to have. So if any of you have any inputs on what kind of classes you would like to see, we'll take time and see what your idea is worth it or not. If it is, we will venture out there and find the best expert we can to come share his knowledge about that topic with you. In the meantime, we're going to talk tonight about bees. We've got two guests that I've invited to come tonight and talk to us about beekeeping. The second guest is going to show up around 7:45. And so until then, this will be Michael Cameron. Come on up, Mike. Michael Cameron and I have been friends for 7, 8
years, lots of years.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't know he was a beekeeper. He was my banker. He's a really, really good banker. And so he serviced my company's needs for many years. And then one day on Facebook Marketplace, I saw this really cool looking beehive, which you see right here behind us. And I'm thinking, that's what I'm looking for. So I look at who's offering it, Michael Cameron. Holy cow, that's my bud Mike. So he is a carpenter by hobby.
Oh, growing up, I used to do construction and stuff, and my grandpa and my dad taught me, and so it's just been a hobby ever since.
And how long have you been raising bees?
Since I've been in Saratoga, so this will go on my almost 4th year. So I'm not an expert. It's just I'm still an amateur.
Well, so you're an expert when it comes to the hives, and that's what you were brought in for, because the other gentleman coming in has been raising bees from scratch for how long? I mean, since he was a kid.
Oh, long time.
Since he was 12. Anyway, so he's going to share his knowledge about the actual bees, and then Michael's got a lot of experience with the equipment, and what he'll walk you through all that kind of stuff. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and turn the time over to Michael. And by the way, I always encourage people to ask questions while we're going through the meeting.
You can stop me in the middle. I don't have a, you know.
This is not that big of a crew.
Yeah, so feel free to
ask questions as you have, okay?
Okay, so I'm just going to go basically over the equipment, and let me tell you a little bit of backstory of why I end up doing this kind of a hive. And this is called a long laying, short for Langstroth hive.
You want to use PowerPoint?
Yes, we'll get there. So you can just go to the next one. So a number of years ago, my wife and I, we've been chatting and talking, and my wife does a garden. I assist her a little bit on it. I help harvest the fruit off of the trees that we have and everything. We have apricots and pears and apples and peaches and cherries. And so we'll go ahead and we've tried to maximize out our property. We're only on a 1/4 acre and everything, a little more than a 1/4 acre, and that's about what the amount of trees we could do. And then we decided, well, how can we really be more self-sufficient? And then we added chickens to the mix. And so we have a chicken coop and we have a half a dozen chickens. Then we said, okay, what's the next thing? I said, my dad used to do bees when I was younger, and I would a system doing bees, which meant most of the time I just sat there, licking the honey off of the sides of everything and eating it while he was doing all the work. And I just remember the time we spent together and reminiscing about it. I'm like, let's do bees. And so I started doing research, and I found out it really isn't as hard as you think it is, And you don't want to do a whole lot of analysis to paralysis where you overthink things. Sometimes it's just jumping in that pool in the deep end, or at least in the kiddie side, it's every little toe in there. Just start getting involved, and there's a lot of local people that do bees, and most apiarists or beekeepers will be more than happy to have you come over and see when they're working on their hives. They love you to come over and feel free to, to look and experience it, kind of the try before you buy kind of a thing, to see if it's right for you. So I did a lot of research, and then my wife and I said, let's just go for it. And so we said, we're going to try those flow hives. And there's not a pitch for them or against them. It's just, I decided, those look pretty easy. Let me do it. Got them. Didn't work. For where I was at, my bees just didn't like them. I got them and they started growing, and then I put the top part where you harvest everything, and they just weren't producing and putting honey in there. So I took them off and put traditional hives on, top boxes, supers on there, and they just started just like nature's meant to do, and boom, all of a sudden, first year I think we had 75 or 100 pounds of honey. Last year we did 125 pounds of honey, and it's not too terribly difficult. And so one of the things that you can do is follow just beekeepers. There's a Utah Beekeepers Association that you can join on Facebook, and you can start connecting with people that are right in your area. I'm up in Saratoga Springs. If you're ever up that direction, you're welcome to stop by and see my hive. I had last year, and I do have contact with my mentor, Chandler. He's done bees for, 8 or 10 years or something. And he's one of those ones that can come over and just pick up bees without wearing much of anything other than shorts and a t-shirt. I'm not to that point yet and everything. I just totally, usually get pretty, outfitted up to work on them.
So do you only have one hive?
I'm picking up my second hive. The last couple of years I've had 2 hives. And the reason I got to this point where I decided to do a long laying is because I was working with the hives, and I had them stacked where I had them you had 3 supers on top. And so you're picking up the supers, and I had the deep supers. And the deep ones are the ones that fit these ones. You have medium ones that are, the frames only go to about here. And so I went ahead and had these. And when you have 10 of these across and they're full of honey, it's about 90 to 100 pounds. And so you're lifting it and then twisting it and putting it down. And I was doing that a lot. And I'm not as young as I used to be. And then we had a flood in our backyard on the lower level. And so I was out digging a trench with my neighbors all over trying to get the water before it flooded in our yard. And so I wrecked my back, and I ended up with a herniated disc and a bulging disc. And doctor said, you want surgery, or do you want to calm it down a little bit? And so I opted for other methods, and so I'm doing pretty good. But I'm like, great, I can't work on my bees. I had 4 paramedics have to carry me out of the house to give me the ER. That's how bad it was at one point. So I'm like, well, how can I work with my bees? And then I learned about long laying straw hive. And so the long laying, there's a pretty good following throughout the country, actually throughout the world, with different types. And so with this particular one, I think we can do, I think this one's 26 frames that go across. And you can actually keep 2 different hives inside of here. So 2 colonies. So you have 2 different queens, and I'll go through the parts in just a moment.
And they cohabitate okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my other hives, I had that, they're only like this far apart. I had a stainless steel table outside, and I had the 2 hives. And you'll see some people that they have their hives squished up next to each other, and they're fine. And it's amazing because the queen with all of her bees, and none of those bees will ever go into the other hive, into the other colony. They know exactly where to go. They orientate themselves as they're going. On the other side, and you can come over later, but there's 2 different entrances on the back, one on each side. And so there's landing boards that they can land on, go inside. There's actually 2 entrances on each side. So an extra one for additional ventilation, and during the peak pollen season.
Do they sit on these sawhorses at home?
Yes. I like the sawhorses because I get a lot of wind up in Saratoga, and it doesn't move at all. I mean, it's stable as all get out. So, and you just attach them underneath by a few screws, by 3 screws on each side, or I think yours is 6. But yeah, they'll just sit on there. And so what I did is, once I was able to start walking again, and while I was laid up, I'm sitting in the recliner, and my bees left. They swarmed and took off, and I wasn't able to go out and work with them at all. And my wife was busy taking care of me, and she's a full-time chaplain as well, so she wasn't able to go and help with them. So I lost my bees over the end of last year. So after my harvest and everything. And so I'm like, well, I don't ever want to have that ever happen again. So how can I do this? And so being able to come over and just open this just like this to work with them is a whole lot easier than lifting up 100 pounds. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that. And so the one I initially built, my first one I built, it's actually a little bit longer. And when I put that one out there, I actually had to have some people help me move it out. That's why I like these ones, because they're a lot more easier for 2 people to move without being too cumbersome. But now I've been out there with the bees, I've been working on them, and I even got to the point where I can go out there and work on them without a suit and everything. Because you only work with a part of them at a time, instead of taking off the top lid and everything, and then you've got just 10 frames and all the bees going all over. You're only working with a few frames at a time because you have these cover boards that are all across it. So let me explain the parts of it. So that's kind of the backstory of why I got into this and why I started doing this. And I actually only built one for me. And I was actually going to sell my old ones, the old traditional ones, and that's when you called me. And I said, well, yeah, they're great, and they were almost brand. Some of them I had some because I was going to expand to another hive, and I wanted some additional in our yard. And I told Aaron why I was doing it, and I showed him the picture of mine. He goes, "Oh, that's the one I want." I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it for you," and everything. And he goes, "Well, some other people might want it." I'm like, "Okay, we'll see."
So what's the dimensions of that?
It's about 4 feet wide. And about 20 inches, long, and then about 2 feet deep. So the footprint is not huge. And so it takes up the same amount of space that I was using before. It's just a whole lot easier to place it and put it where I want it. I happen to put mine, when I place it, I went and got pavers because I have mine up in my second tier in my house in the back, and I just wanted the feet off of the ground. Well, now we redid that whole area anyhow since then. But so I have mine sitting on pavers on each of the sawhorse legs and everything. So, and it's nice because when you come along here, since the entrances are on the back, or that's actually the front, you're coming along the back, you're not disturbing the bees. They're coming in and going and still bringing in the pollen, bringing in the nectar and everything, and filling everything up. And you're not in their way. And so it's kind of great that you can just come back here and do your own little thing, and you're fine, and they leave you alone. Do you want to go to the next slide? And so there's several different ones. This is what we call the long laying. Then you got the flow hives. And I've talked to some beekeepers, and they like the flow hive. And in their area, it works well. If you have to make sure that's really in the sun though, from my understanding, just to make it flow well.
That's the one that didn't work well for you.
That one didn't work well for me. I have talked to people that have worked. These are called top bar hives. And those ones, you just literally, you have a top bar across the top, and then you have a little bit of a foundation, just a little smidgen of this across the top, and then you let them build it out, or build it down, I should say.
It's like it's the rectangle look.
More of a triangle, almost trapezoid, I don't know what you'd call that. And so, and I've got a friend that he has one of those, and he's up in Salt Lake, and he likes that kind. And he's done that for a couple of years. It's a little bit different to harvest and everything. Mine I like because you can get all these traditional, these I'm just using you see these all over the place, right? And if you want to start and you want to get into it really less expensive, I mean, you can get those off Amazon. Pretty cheap. And actually Amazon's about the cheapest place to get them, just so you know, for a setup of traditionals.
So those are the traditionals.
These are the frames that you get in the traditionals. And actually, I get these off of Amazon. I don't have the time, or it's not worth my time to build these myself and everything, so I just buy them off of Amazon for them. And actually, I stopped doing that. I just now tell the people that are buying the hives from me, I'm like, I mean, if you want them, I'll be more than happy to order them and have them shipped here so they're ready for you, and I'll put them together for you. That's fine, because you know there's staples in there and everything.
They don't come like that.
No, they come, all these pieces are all apart. And then, I mean, it's just easy. I mean, there's a slot along the top, and then you just put these two in. I actually now use my pneumatic, I just have a air compressor with staples, and I just use the narrow crown staples. So much better. But I put a little bit of glue on each one of them as well. I'm kind of redundant with a lot of things, and I don't want to go back later on and keep doing something. So I try to put it together right from the beginning. But I'll encourage people, it's cheaper than if I do it, because if I do it, then I'm going to charge you for my time on that. So I actually now, it's easy just to sit in front of the TV. I mean, I've got a 50-foot hose, so for my workshop, I can come inside if I want, or I now have a TV in my workshop, and I can just be watching something or have something in the background as I'm just, or have music going or something. So it doesn't take as much time anymore for me to do that, but if people want to save a few dollars on their own, that's the way to do it. And those ones, there's some local people selling that you can find some of these traditional ones, but I still found in my experience, the cheapest place is Amazon. And you can get a whole kit with it. So it'll come with a lot of these different things. And these are called, can you go back one slide? Lay-ins. Okay, you can go back the way. These ones are called lay-ins. So they're a little bit different, kind of a shape. And this kind of shows you the size. This is traditional. So you got about 12, if you cut it at 12 inches, that's how this is, but it's a little bit deeper. But I think it would be a little bit more difficult for your harvesting just with the equipment. And I'll show you in a minute the add equipment. Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. Any questions on those? Okay, so here's mine. My wife, she has a Cricut. And so she did doing some permanent vinyl on the outside. We'll see how well it works. This was my first experiment. I like using the piano hinges on the back rather than just regular hinges. I mean, if you got a hankering to do this, I mean, I'll be more than happy to send you pictures of what I've done and kind of the cutouts, and you kind of get a general idea how to do it. But the piano hinges are a lot more stable than just having, I think, two large hinges on the back. It also seals it pretty well too on the back, on that side. And then here's now the ones that I'm doing now is I started doing the cedar shingles on it with the tar paper underneath it. It is really difficult on bending this because I don't have the actual tools to bend it, so it's all bent by hand with a hand, and it's a pain in the rear. So you're lucky on that one.
So that's metal on that one?
This is tin, yeah. It's galvanized steel. No, it's just painted to look like copper and everything. So it's been scuffed up and then painted. and everything, a couple coats on that. I happen to, these ones, it is a lot easier to do this, putting on those, right? And then of course the sawhorses. So I forgot to put the picture of the other guy that got this particular one.
So how long have you been doing the cedar shingles?
Last month, so there's a couple of them and two more.
Or last, probably like a roof on a.
I think they would last for quite a while because because not only that, I have the tar paper underneath that as well. And so it's not, and then the way I did the roof, the overlaps on the top, I don't think it's gonna, I think it'll be fine. And it's a whole lot better than a lot of other ones I've seen online. You know, and I've looked at some of the other ones, and maybe it's because I've done carpentry, I critique things a little bit. I'm like, so I took all these ideas from other people, and that's how I got to this. And so let me kind of show you a little bit. So you have in each of in there, you have, these are what's called inline feeders. There's lots of different ways to go ahead and feed your bees. And there's gonna be different times, especially during the dearth, when there's not a lot of floral and pollen out there for them, that you're gonna need to feed them, and especially during the winter time. I like the inline feeders. And they have these tubes down there. So this makes it so the bees can crawl up it and everything. So this will be filled with sugar water. So it's usually a one-to-one. No, this whole thing is.
Okay.
But if you didn't have that tube in there, they would drown trying to get the stuff. And so these ones, it gives them that grip on the side, those little holes, allows them to get the,
So they can call down as far as
they-
the water
they-
is to get it.
and then they can go ahead and crawl out without drowning. So there's two of them. And then I have, because I like to do, I have two hives that I have one on each side. These ones, I've actually built it where I just you just put this a little bit aside, and then you have a funnel. And so during the winter time, you're not having to disturb them, you know, when you don't have to look at them. Because you still want to check on them for certain things, but most of the time you don't touch them during the winter time, but you got to feed them during the winter time. And so that was my solution for it. So there's several ways to do it. This is the way I do it. And I like the inline feeders. Then what I do is, and then the first section, you're going to have what's called the nuke. Now there's two ways when you get bees. Garrett will explain this to you. This first one is what's called a package of bees, and they'll come in. This is what mine came in. And there's a can that goes on the top that's full of sugar water that they can access from the bottom so they can feed the queen and themselves. And then there's going to be I think it's 15,000 bees inside of here. You know, it's like 3 pounds of bees. I always recommend you go to Family Dollar. Don't go to Amazon and spend $5 or $10 or $15 you go to Family Dollar, get one of these and put it around, because inevitably bees they're good. Usually here that it seals them pretty well in here, but when I picked mine up from Garrett, and I had the doors open, lots of bees, because it's a lot of bees in that area, and they all came flying in, and I couldn't get them all out and everything, and then they wanted to hover around on the outside of this. I'm like, oh great, so I just put this around it, okay? So this is what a package comes in. Now, and I start off in my first year, I start off with a package and then a nuke. Now a nuke is a set of 5 frames, and they will go in. Usually you'll pick them up in like this, or sometimes they're a cardboard box that you'll get them in, or a wooden box. And then there'll be 5 of these in here. There'll be a couple of them that it'll be a mated queen. It'll have a lot of larvae and eggs and everything, so you can see that she's already producing and she's already a healthy queen. And then there'll be a lot of worker bees and nurse bees in there with them. And then there'll be a couple of them full of food for them as well. And basically what the difference between the package like this, or like that, and the nuke is like a package like a month later. So it's just grown. Does that make sense? So
What does nuke stand for?
what?
Is that acronym?
Nucleus? I don't know, it's an NUC is what it is. And actually good, it's not an acronym, I think it's short for like a nucleus or nuclear, I don't know.
That's how you purchase them.
So that's how you purchase them, yes. And then let's say if a queen ever dies and your bees aren't making a new queen, you can, or you have too much of an aggressive queen, then you can order a new queen and introduce it, and sometimes you'll get just a queen instead of if you still have bees in your hive. So anyhow, and then you'll have the lid for it and everything. And these also come in handy if you ever want to catch a swarm. That's the topic for another day, because it has the entrance for it too, and you can open that and they'll come in there and everything.
So when you get the bees, that stays with you, you don't return that?
Depends on where you're getting it from. I decided just to buy one, and so I got that off of Man Lake, I think it was. So once you start searching things for bees online, you find all sorts of things. And I do a lot of research because I like getting the best deal on things. So now I know where to get the best deals for everything. So you have questions, you're welcome to call me. So then you'll put the nuke in here, the 5 frames. And then after that, you're going to put what's called a queen excluder. Now these are always the exact same size no matter where you get them, these dimensions. So all the worker bees can go through, but the queen cannot get through here because her abdomen is too big. So these are built a little bit taller, and they sit taller than this. So that way when you put the top covers on, the queen can't walk through and go on to where you want them to put the honey. Because it wouldn't be I don't know how you would harvest if you didn't have, if you had eggs and all that, you couldn't harvest off of those kind of frames. So anyhow, so you have the queen excluder. Then you put all the other frames along, you keep putting more and more frames. As they're starting to build more and more, you start adding more frames for them. And then you have what's called the divider. And so that makes it so all your bees from this colony can't go into the next. And so there's 2 queen excluders for each hive that I make. So that way we can have that on that colony, and we can keep them totally separate. Now, sometimes one colony will build better than another. So I happen to get my bees from Garrett. Lots of places you can get them. I like Garrett's just because he's over here in Spanish, and so it's local. I know where he's at. He answers my questions when he's not during the busy season and everything. And the first one I got was a package, and that was my best one. That's the one that kept year after, 2 years in a row. It's just boom. My second one that I got a nuke. They didn't produce as much as that first one I got and everything. So I got these Cornelians for the first batch that I got, and the second batch was Italians. My Italians just didn't produce up where I was.
Were they Italians?
Italians. Mm-hmm.
So do you think it was because of the breed of bee?
I don't know. I'm guessing so. Because I did all the same thing for both of them. They're feeding and all that stuff and checking them at the same times. But I got the package first and then the nuke a month later. That was the only difference between them. So, if you want to go to the next one? So, this is kind of all put together. We got handles here. On each of the top covers, I put a vent so that way, because the bees will go ahead and keep a 97-degree temperature in each of these. And these are all insulated on the bottoms, sides, the bottoms, and the top. So I've just insulated, because I hated having to put insulation around every year. It's just a pain in the rear for me.
So it all has that metal stuff on all sides?
No, actually there's the other insulation. It's more of the styrofoam insulation stuff. But then I put an additional one on top. I think it looks nicer. and also because I'm going to have a lot of bees. When I go to work on the bees, what I'll do is I'll just take off one of these, and then it's just exposing a few at a time, a few frames at a time. So I'll show you.
So the little holes are more for ventilation?
They help them with the ventilation. So I have this couple things. Some of the things that I got that were more of a pain in the rear for me was I'd have to suit up every time, get all my stuff together, get it in a bag or a box, and take it up to where my stuff was. So it added more time, which meant I had to decide whether I really wanted to go and do it that day or not. You know, I'm like, oh, great, you know. And so I decided that I was going to go ahead and have it where I can just keep all my tools out with it. And so not only do I put my tools out here, but then I also have this little shelf or brackets where I can just, as I'm working on some of the frames, you're going to pull them out and then you're going to inspect them. You'll see, okay, is this, you know, what's the brood pattern look like? Or is she laying? What's the pattern she's laying? And then you'll flip it over and then you'll look on the back side, see how it's doing. But then rather than just putting it back down, you're going to put it back up there, grab the next one, do that, and then you'll look at the 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want to do, and then you're going to go and put them right back into the same order.
And there's
Just got
bees
enough.
hanging out at
Oh, yeah.
that time.
They're usually just staying on there. You have a few that'll fly around and everything. When I first got going, first year, it was kind of a little bit scary for me. So I suited up. And so on this package over here, and if you know, you can go on Amazon and get these packages, but this is a full suit. And so I got one for me, one for my wife, one for my grandkids, you know, and everything, although they are a little bit large for my grandkids. And so I suited fully up and I'm out with them and I felt comfortable. Great. And I'm working with them. You have these gloves on and they're nice and thick, kind of a pain a little bit, but it's workable and things were going great. Well, my first package went so well that they split. So they decided to take a queen and leave and went to the back fence. Well, I didn't know that happened at the time. I was back with the chickens and it was on the other side of my workshop. And all of a sudden the neighbor called my wife and said, do you have bees in your backyard? I said, yeah. Well, you need to look out there. And it looked like a whole pillar, like the plagues of Egypt or something. Just going, and then they were all around our backyard. And I'm actually, my wife called me on the phone and said, you need to look at the bees. She didn't want, you know, and so I looked at the bees and my grandkids were out with me. And I'm like, oh crap. And I was freaked out. And I'm like, kids, get inside. Why, Papa? I'm like, get inside, please. We'll talk about that later. They go inside, and they were like 10 and 8 at the time. And I'm watching these bees just flying all over. What I didn't realize is actually when they're starting to swarm, they're actually pretty docile. I didn't know this. I thought they were just going to swarm and attack people and like Africanized bees or something. That's what I was going through my head. I didn't do enough research to understand what a swarm meant and how they leave and they split. So anyhow, they all end up at a back fence and on some thistles and a vinyl fence. So I'm calling every Facebook post and KSL post about catching swarms that I could. And this guy named Chandler, who lives not too far from me, he said, oh, I'll be there. I'm in the neighborhood and everything. I'll come over. So he comes over, puts on just a veil, just over his head, t-shirt and shorts. All right, why don't you show me where they are? I'm like, okay. I'm totally suited up. And he's next to me. He can't be more than like 25 or something, maybe. And he just goes over there and goes, oh, look at these. These are so awesome. And he just puts his hands into them like, oh, these are lovely ladies. These are so nice. Oh, hi, ladies. And he's talking to the bees. It's like the bee whisperer. I'm like, oh, cow. Like, dude, you're nuts. And I'm just ready to call 911 or something. And so he's just, okay, let's see if we can find the queen. And so he went ahead and brought one of those nuke boxes. And he goes, okay. So he said, will you hold this for me? So I held the box and he would look in him. Okay, no queen there. And he'd just to dump them into the box, go to the next handful and keep doing it, and finally he found the queen. Once you find the queen, he put the queen in there, and then he puts the box down, and then they just all start going over there and everything. So within an hour or two, they're all in the box and everything. And he goes, actually, yes, they're so full because they've eaten a lot of honey because they're going to be traveling. And he tried to explain how it is, and he says, they're super nice. You know, you have to try hard to get stung by these bees at that time. Like, okay. I'm still not quite to that point. I'm getting there. I've actually now gotten from a regular suit to just a jacket. So to me, that's a step up for me, you know, and stuff, because I mean, I like having it where the elastic goes underneath my boot or my shoes and everything. I mean, but now, so I went to the jacket, and now I've been going out there a lot of times without anything on there. And I was like, no big deal. I was out there on Friday taking a look and didn't even put anything on. So, you know, so you get to a comfort level as you go along. Yep.
How often do you check on them?
When you first get them, you kind of leave them alone for a couple weeks. Just let them be in there, do their thing. But then I start checking on them a couple times a week and everything. And I look at what they're doing, how they're laying, the pattern and everything. If there's abnormal laying, or she's spotty on where she's laying and everything, it's not a good pattern, then there could be problems that you want to address. And so far, I haven't had any of those problems that I've been looking for to make sure they're not there, so I don't know what I would do. But you're also looking for mites, which is an important thing to see if there's, you know, if all of a sudden you see a lot of bees with wings that are chewed up and things like that. It might be bark beetles, it might be varroa mites and so on. So you want to be, you know, so you're checking for that. You're checking to see how they're doing, if they're thriving or if they're starting to deteriorate. And you get a good feel for your bees after a while. And you know, you're like, oh yeah, these are my bees. Oh yeah, they're doing great. Or I'm worried about them. You start getting a sense for it.
So when you say pattern, what's a pattern?
Think about a football, you know, 3D football. That's kind of the pattern that they'll lay in. And so when the queen starts, she's going to lay a pattern, and these all be like, you'll see like little mini pieces of rice kind of thing in each of these. And the first frame, the one in the middle, will have the most. Okay, so like the shape of a football almost. And then the next frame out a little bit less. And the next one out a little bit less. And then you'll get more food on the ones on the outside and everything. So it's almost the shape of a football, you know, if you're to slice that football.
Is the pattern the larvae?
Yeah, and you'll see them growing, and then you'll see the eggs here in the different stages. And so you'll want to say, okay, do I have good brood? You know, and they'll be capped over eventually, and then you'll know the drone ones, because they'll look like a little bullet shape. They'll come out a little bit more. And the guys are the freeloaders in here. There's like less than 5% are males. They're just there to mate, and then they get killed. And then at the end of the season, when winter starts, you can actually watch your bees drag out the males and get them out of the hive where they die. And stuff. They literally do. It's a thing and stuff. It's pretty fascinating. And yeah, it's the more you start getting into it, the more you learn. We want to go to the next one?
I have a question
Sure.
for you.
Huh?
I heard that there is a law that people they need to know that you have bees. It's a very old law in, I don't know if it's Utah or where, that they probably should look into it and change it, because that's what I read, and I don't know what you have to say.
I know there's a law. There is, when you do register your hives with the Utah Bee Association, because that way they can come and look at your hive and inspect them to see if you have mites. That's how I've registered mine. I've never had them stop by my place or anything, but you do register them. And then that way also you can get notified if there's an outbreak of varroa mites and you need to do more treatments or things like that. But like my city, they allow apiaries or beehives. And then I happen to live in an HOA, and they also allow it too. So you want to look at your HOA covenants, CCRs and stuff. So, but yeah, in Utah you can have them, you know, at least in I imagine it might be city to city, but yeah, I looked online and my city is fine with
So
that.
if you're losing your bees over the winter, do you think it's because you're not feeding them enough?
It could be, or it could be you have mites or beetles or other reasons. I like to keep my friend. I said mine overwintered 2 years, great, no problem. But I insulated him. My friend didn't insulate his, and he lost 2 of his top bar hives that
So
he had.
you literally, before you start doing this, you wrap them in insulation?
I would go ahead and get the styrofoam insulation, and I'd put it around on the outside, and then I duct tape it, and then I put plastic tarp around it.
So it could be
And stuff.
winter cold.
It was a lot better that
My
way.
son did it for 12 years and he only had 1 hive winter over.
Yeah, and so mine were great, but I did have a lot of people that I know, quite a few that if there's a huge cold spell, because now there are things you can do for heaters and stuff. I can't afford that kind of stuff they come out with. So to me, it's like insulate them. It makes sense. A lot of people do it. And that's why I did the insulation. So it's 3/4 inch insulation all around it.
You don't need to winterize.
So you don't have to winterize this. And then
It helps with the cool, I would assume, in the summer.
yep, that's in theory, that's what it's supposed to do. And so this is my first year with a long lane myself and everything, so I will see how that does. But I also I have vents up here to help them with the heat on both sides. And these little things here are what's called bee escapes. So when you go to close it, sometimes you might have some bees still flying in here. When you close it, they'll find their way out because they always go towards the light. So, and that's why the bee escapes. So that's why I put all my tools out here. This is what, when you put you'll find the queen and put her in there, and that keeps her nice and safe while you're doing the rest of your inspection. Sometimes you'll just leave her in there, but a lot of times people will go ahead and clip her in here and keep her to make sure you don't squash her on accident, because it's expensive to buy a new queen. You have different types of hooks. These are the J hooks because they have propolis, it's like cement. It's like, and it'll go in, they'll propolize frames together. And so you'll put this in there and just kind of like pull it apart slightly just to break it. And then you'll do this on the side to help lift it up because your gloves are kind of hard to get in there. And then you lift that up and then there you go. And then sometimes you get some burr comb on there and you'll just scrape this off. So these are J hooks. I think that's called the L hook on that one. And then you have a horsehair brush, and sometimes you'll want to, get them off and say, oh, let me get these guys off of here. And you'll just brush them into there, Or if doing different things with your nukes or whatever, you might have to brush some to get some in. Usually with your nuke though, when you're putting them in, you'll put all the frames in there the same order that you get them out of here, and you'll dump out the box on there. But it depends on the kind of box. But for my package, I dumped them and shook them a bit, not too much, but enough. And then I just left it sitting on a little stool out front, and then they just make their way out and go in there. You'll see that in here. So if you want to go to the next. So these are the half ones. If you do get the ventilated ones, full suits, and these, Amazon, cheapest. Hey, Garrett. You want to go to the next slide? And so this is doing your treatments and everything. So I don't like killing my bees, and so I do mine with the powder sugar treatment, and lots of places to get these. But Amazon, you can get them all over the place. Garrett can explain about those if you want. But when you have to treat for mites a couple times a year, or whenever you notice mites as you're checking them, then there's different ways to treat your hives. If you want to go to the next slide. And then different times you'll feed them. Here's a mason jar way you feed them, just upside down. You're poking the holes in the thing. I did that my first year over winter. So this is what I had. So it was, I had to insulate it around it, and then I just would replace that periodically. But I like the inline ones with these hives. So you want to go to the next slide? And then harvesting, which is the fun part. I love the harvesting. It's awesome. And so everything I got, I use a electric spinner. To me, it's just a whole lot easier, and sit there and crank it. Other people like having the ones that you crank case electricity's off or something, that's fine. That's a refractometer where you look at the content of the honey in the event that it's not all capped when you're pulling some out. If it's all capped, you're fine to harvest it, but if it's not, you want to make sure, because the bees will cap it when it's the perfect water content. But if you start harvesting too early and you get water content, that's when the honey can go bad. And so it has to be under 16?
Yep.
Is it? Under 16. And so those cost like 15, 20 bucks online, Amazon. So all this stuff. And if you want, I'll let you know when I'm going to harvest, and then you're welcome to come on up, you know.
Something additional with those, we don't really have to worry about honey being too wet in Utah. We're just such a dry state. Places like Florida, they have to deal with spoiling honey pretty frequently. I typically use those meters when I'm mixing my feed. In the spring, you want it 50-50, so the line will be at 50, and in the fall, you want it 2-to-1, so closer to like 65-70%. So those are good tools to have.
And cheap to get.
Yeah.
So, and then basically once you're taking, you know, I use this kind of thing. It's just like a roller that goes over once they've capped all of the honey. You do that to uncap it, and then you put them in the spinner. This is why I like these kind myself rather than the top bars or the, what was that other one I said? The other one? Yes.
Yeah.
So, because these, they fit nice and easy in there, and you just spin them. Then the honey will come out here when you're ready into a double strainer that you have over your bucket.
Is it one stream at a time that goes in there?
This one just goes over the top of that one.
Spinner.
Oh no, and mine depends on the size you get. Mine can do 4 of the deeps at a time. But you can get ones that do 2, ones that do 3. I was gonna get it, so I might as well get the 4 one, you know, and everything. It's only like 50 bucks more.
Something with those, there's 2 different kinds of spinners. There's ones where the frames are kind of in like this, like a pizza shape. Those ones you can spin them however much you want, but there's kinds where the frames sit kind of outwards away from the center force. And if you spin those totally out on one side, there's too much weight on the inside and it'll actually like crack or break your frame. So if you get that kind that's kind of like a box or a triangle, you want to spin it for 30 seconds, flip it and spin the other side completely out and then flip it again to get that side again. Because that weight from the inside, it'll just destroy your frames, especially if they're the wood with the
wires.
It'll just, or that kind, it'll just literally pop right out. Then it's really sad. A lot of my customers are brand new beekeepers, and I always recommend to my new customers ApiGuard. It used to be Apivar, but seriously in the past year or 2, it has really quit working well, unfortunately. So ApiGuard is the new go-to. Works great. I would most likely pair it with oxalic acid. The vaporizer is the easiest form. It's a little like wand with a little disc at the end. You can get on Amazon for a few bucks. Just slide it in the bottom of the hive, you vaporize it, and you do that 4 times every 6 days. You can use this all year long. Not really in the fall the fall or winter, because it has to percolate up through the bees and the brood chamber to kill the mites. But in the winter time, the bees will cluster really tight because they're so dang cold, and that vape just doesn't really get through the bees real well, so it kind of just trickles around. So not great for like winter time, but spring and summer, oxalic acid's wonderful. This is, honestly, oxalic acid is the best also treatment. If you only treat with oxalic acid, I just don't think it's quite strong enough to totally do the job. So the beekeepers that never call me back are the ones that use mostly ApiGuard and oxalic acid paired together. Those are the guys that they get their hive kills it, and then they never call me again, which is fine by me because I love beekeepers that are thriving out there.
Do you go ahead and do it at certain times of the year, or do you double check the mite population first?
It's a good question. Always assume that there's mites in there. It's tough to get them all. This helpful little tool here, when I do my mite wash in here, and how I do it is I just get like Dawn dish soap and put a little bit of Dawn in there, put water in there, and then fill it up about a little over halfway. And then get a frame of bees. So find your brood chamber, say your brood chamber, you have a frame here, here, here. That's your brood chamber, probably 4 or 5 frames. Get the frame next to the brood chamber, pop that out, and then smack it into something like this, just like a little plastic thing. Knock all the bees off, and then really study this with your eyes to make sure your queen isn't in that group of bees. Like really make sure, because if you dump your queen in your Dawn dish soap, she's donezo. So once you do that, get a little half cup, and it's kind of like a weird cooking recipe. Get your half cup of bees and dump your bees in your cocktail here. It'll instantly euthanize them all, which is sad, but the mites kill all of them. So it's kind of something that, sacrifice we make. Put the lid on there, swirl it around real good. I do it for a minute or 2, and then this internal thing will start to swirl. Once you've done that for a couple minutes, hold it up and you'll see your mites at the bottom here. I've got a really good picture. I should have put it on the PowerPoint, but I had a friend, he had probably 300 mites appear. It was a dark cloud of mites. That hive was dead a week later. It was bad. I like to see 3 or less is what we're looking for in a half a cup of bees. If you have 4 or more, then it's time to treat. 3 or less is what we shoot for, especially going into the fall when the numbers are going to decline. If you have a few more than 3 in the middle of the summer, that's probably fine. But if you have that many in the fall, you're in trouble. I forgot we got on that tangent, but as far as what you can use with honey supers, which you explained what honey supers were, right?
Not really, I didn't go into detail.
Okay, so do we have a Langstroth box here by chance? No, okay, so your beehive, your standard like bee box you guys have seen, that's your Langstroth setup. The bottom 2 boxes are your brood chamber where you're gonna be raising your bees, your baby bees and whatnot. And then on top of that, yeah, go back. Yeah, here we go, perfect, yeah. So these are your brood chamber boxes. Everything above that I like to call rent. It's the honey that we can pull off and harvest ourselves. So you can treat with whatever you want while your bees are in these 2 boxes. But once they've grown and filled up these boxes, and you want them full, by the way, full of bees. Bees, they like to be crowded. So keep your bees in one box, and once that box is looking 90% full of bees, add your second box. About a month and a half later, that'll be full. And then once that's full, add your honey super on. When your honey super is on, then there's only a select amount of treatments you can use. The drone brood you can totally use because that doesn't get in your honey. The Apivar, which has that amitraz in it, that is a poison. You don't want that in your honey, so don't treat with that. Your oxalic acid is totally organic. It actually appears in nature in many different ways. It's in honey in trace amounts. There's a lot of it in celery. So oxalic acid, which is that vaporizer or that dribble or the pads I was talking about, you can use any form of oxalic acid with your honey super on. Apigard, which is that thymol, the tin that he showed you guys, that is organic as well. It's totally safe to eat. The problem is it's very concentrated in that Apigard, and it's quite fragrant. Like it has a very strong scent. So if you put it on with your honey super, it's gonna taint the flavor of your honey. I've had Apigard honey, it's not good stuff. I fed it all back to the bees, needless to say. When you're applying your Apigard tin, that's the thymol, you're gonna wanna take your honey super off in the fall, first week of September, I recommend. Harvest that, and then you only have these 2 boxes left. Slide your Apigard in the top of the box here, or you can put it in between. You can crack the brood box, it does very well here. But also in the top, I would not slide it in the entrance. The reason being is it fumigates, and so as it fumigates, it percolates down through the brood chamber and will kill your varroa mites. The problem, it's heavier than air. I've had a lot of people who slide it in the entrance, and then it kind of just percolates right out the entrance without doing much good. So I've had people like, I put it in, what happened? It's because they put it in here. This, I don't know what's better, top or bottom, top or center, I mean. Like they both do a really good job. So if you're just feeling like lazy, sliding the top, the center's probably a bit better, but whatever. Formic acid, well, last one. Formic acid is also organic. You can use formic acid with honey supers on, but you can't use formic acid when it's too hot out, or that problem where it will slaughter your queens and bees will get even worse and it will kill your whole hive. Just steer clear of formic acid. Apigard's the same way, by the way. You can't use it over 87 degrees or it's just too strong and it will drive your bees out the front. So that's one. Pull your honey supers off in early September and throw it on immediately. Question?
So how do these mites get into the hive?
They're always in there. That's a good question. Couple things. they're always there. Really hard to kill them all. Packages always start really low because you'll break their brood cycle, and the mites, they don't have that long where they can be phoretic. They kind of need a little bit of brood. But even if you manage to get a hive that has no mites, drones, the male bees that fly out once a day to go breed with the queen, they're pretty bad at getting back home, and I think it's part of the genetic diversity. They kind of will find a new village to go to, and it helps you increase different genetics. But the mites, since they like those drones so much, they're kind of mite magnets, those drones. So they'll fly out from this hive, and say this guy is not a very good beekeeper, not treating his mites very well. That drone will go mate with the queen in this drone column, and then he'll decide, nah, I don't really want to go back where I came from, and he'll follow his new buddies to a different hive, and then he'll infect the hive that you have with mites. Additionally, mites will actually have been found to crawl off on flowers, sit there and wait for a new bee to come, and then crawl on that bee. So they always get in there. That's why I recommend always, always, always treat. Don't just assume like that if you don't see any mites in there, they're not there. They're gonna be there. You need to check for them. And the fall is the big time to do it for that access reason I explained earlier. Your question?
Yeah, you kind of answered my question.
Oh,
I was gonna say, where did the mites come from?
Yeah.
It's the drones that bring it into the
Yeah, they're little stinkers. Yep.
Yeah, we gotta find something that kings the drones.
Exactly. What's fascinating as well is the mites can tell winter's coming, and the bees will kick all the drones out in the winter. Like if you sit and watch your hive in the fall, there'll be a day where you just see like hundreds of drones on the ground, just all sad and depressed. Because the bees, they decrease their numbers, but they're not just going to decrease their own numbers. They're going to kick all the drones out because they just kind of sit around and eat food all day. I wish that was my life. It sounds great, but the bees don't like that either. They kick the boys out, but the mites, it's fascinating. As winter approaches, they jump off of the drones and then they latch onto the worker bees. So when the drones get kicked out, those sneaky little mites are still in the hive. So exactly, it's really annoying. It's really annoying, but I think that was most of what I had to say about, yeah, this is a good graphic here. Just mites, kill them, kill them, kill them. The bad news. Do we have any more questions about mite control? That was kind of a long, no?
Swarm control.
Swarm control, next one. Oh, here we go. Yeah, those are your queen cells. These are beautiful. You're gonna see a lot of these this time of year. In the springtime, a beehive is an organism. An individual bee, really, it's kind of hard to define it as alive because one bee, they're a eusocial insect, right? They can't survive alone. So how the hive reproduces naturally is by swarming, which they raise their own queen. That new virgin queen will pop out of here. The old queen, she'll shrink down in size and she'll take off and go fly on and land on a limb anywhere. Then half the hive will just fly off and go congregate around her. Have any of you guys ever seen a big swarm hanging out on a building? Or it's a pretty cool thing to see. Swarm season's a lot of fun. Catching them is cool. So swarms are typically really awesome hives too. So definitely catch one if you see one. And a lot of people spray them, so you're saving the bees if you do that.
And if you see one and you don't want to catch one, call a bee,
What this guy's
anyone,
saying. Yeah.
message them, hey, I just see a swarm over here on this tree, and put it on the Utah Beekeepers Association or anywhere on Facebook for a local one. And people will run, I'm actually keeping one of those in the back of my car with my jacket.
Smart. Yeah, I have one in the back of my car all spring long. You're a beekeeper. That's awesome.
Yeah, 2 years ago I wouldn't have done that. I wasn't that gutsy. Now it's like, oh.
That's funny. I caught a swarm with my, how would I call him? I guess my uncle-in-law the other day, and then I hung out with him the other day, and he had a swarm box in the back of his car, and I asked him why. He's like, oh, that was so much fun in case there's another one, just in case. So yeah, keeping one of those in the back of your car in the spring, just because you never know when you're gonna get that call. And there's Facebook groups you can join. You can call the county and get on your swarm list. There's things you can do. So when there are swarms, they'll call you, the county or Facebook groups. KSL, when I was a small beekeeper a few years ago, I said free swarm removal on KSL. And I got like 5 or 6 calls, free bees I got from those. Don't do that anymore because I got too many bees. But so there's different kinds of queen cells that will help you identify what your hive's trying to do. There's typically 3 different kinds and also a 4th bonus kind I didn't include. There's your swarm cell, a supersedure cell, an emergency cell. If this is your honey frame or your brood frame right here, your swarm cells are typically going to be hanging off the bottom, kind of like a little finger here, just usually hanging off. So if you have your Langstroth boxes and you split them open, how I quickly tell is I just stick my hive tool. Not sure if we have one of those. Beautiful. Oh, that is so handy. what?
Yeah.
I need one of these. So shove your hive tool between the boxes, pop that box up, and if you see a bunch of these little fingers hanging out on the bottom, then your hive's trying to swarm, which means you have a very finite amount of time before half of them take off, and then they go move into your neighbor's chimney, and they won't be happy with you. So check your hive in the spring for swarm cells. The difference between the swarm cell and the supersedure cell, the supersedure cell is not when they're trying to reproduce, they're trying to kill their old queen and give themselves a new queen, because that old queen, she'll be good for up to 3, maybe 4 years. So eventually, a good hive will notice that she's in decline, they'll make it some new queens, and then they'll off her. Supersedure cells are usually in the top third of a frame, weirdly enough. I very rarely see swarm cells up in this sector or quadrant. Usually their swarm cells are on the second half, if not just hanging right off the bottom. Supersedure cells, if they're on the top, and those are typically more like midsummer is when they're trying to supersede, because a lot of queens get to midsummer and then they kind of quit performing if they're an older queen. So if you see a cell up here, just let the bees do what they want to do.
And that's one of those little fingers.
Exactly, yeah. So this is your standard brood right here, and then these little fingers are your queen cells. If you do see that, I always suggest running more than one beehive, because if they kill their old queen or they swarm and this queen fails to correctly go out and breed, then the hive is doomed, because the bees have a short lifespan, 45 days about in the middle of the summer. They need eggs to make new queens, and so if the old queen if they kill her or she flies away in a swarm, new queen comes out, and then the new queen, the virgin queen is what is called, she'll go and kill all of her sister competitors here. They actually do this little piping sound. It's kind of eerie. Like, I've got a box of queens in my car actually right now, and I've been hearing them like just kind of talk to each other my entire drive. And what they're doing is they're kind of like, let's go, let's fight. So that's how they call to each other. They'll go kill the crap out of each other till there's one left. She'll fly out, but if she gets eaten by a bird or gets caught in bad weather or anything, she'll die, and then there's no queens left in the hive, there's no eggs, and so all the bees will age out and then they'll die. So the point I was trying to get to is, if you have 2 or more hives and that happens, you could go buy a new queen, but that's like $50, it's expensive. Or you can just grab a frame of eggs from your 2nd or 3rd or 4th beehive, make sure your queen is not on here from your donor hive, slide that frame of eggs down in your queenless hive, and then they'll just raise another queen, which at that point they'll do it from an emergency cell, which is our 3rd kind there. That's where the bees, they didn't plan to make a queen, but they don't have any other option. So they go into panic mode, but they now have eggs because you've been provided those eggs for you. One of the reasons that you can have emergency cells without giving them a donor frame is if you're looking through your hive and you smash your queen on accident, they're gonna take eggs and they're gonna turn those into queen cells, at least a bunch of them. Any egg that's fertilized can be turned into a queen. That's why all worker bees are female, because if this bee right here had been fed more royal jelly as a baby, she would have turned into a queen. It's quite fascinating. So get your 2nd beehive, in my opinion, and if that happens, give them a new frame, and then it just ensures that your hive is gonna survive. Or if you have one, you have a bunch of new beekeeper friends here, right? And give them a call. I have friends sometimes that say, I have a hive that they didn't requeen, and they come get a frame of brood from me. That's what beekeepers do, we help each other. If you have these swarm cells in the spring, your hive is gonna want to be split. So I wouldn't wait till your hive flies off, because you're probably gonna miss your swarm, because they'll fly up to half a mile away. And it's a pretty large radius, you don't wanna crawl through all your neighbors' backyards and figure out where it went. What you can do is search through your entire hive, figure out where your queen is, pull her out of the hive and move her to a secondary hive with a good chunk of bees and 3 or 4 frames of brood, which are your frames here that have brood on them, and then give them 1 resource or 2 resource frames, a frame of pretty good honey and a frame of pretty good pollen. And that's called a nuke, short for nucleus, which beekeepers like myself sell these as starter beehives as well. But you're making your own mating nuke. You set her aside. Since she's in a different hive, she thinks she has swarmed. And then you leave these queen cells in here, they'll hatch out and they'll go breed, and then you'll have 2 hives. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and the 4th kind, the bonus kind, is a man-made emergency queen cells. That's how we graft queens and how we provide queens for backyard beekeepers. Just a bonus one there. Next slide. Forget what else we had here. Oh, well, I already kind of explained that. Yeah, if you want to split your hives, there's kind of a better way to show. I like to do 3 brood frames here, and then it's just as food here, I would do pollen, because they use pollen to feed their baby bees, and then honey, because honey feeds the adult bees. If you only have honey in the pollen in the hive, your bees will actually starve to death. They can't eat pollen, weirdly enough. It's only for the babies, so make sure you give them at least 1 frame of honey, sometimes 2, because sometimes you get cold spells and they'll eat through all their resources. Yeah, breeding hives is pretty great. You can do it with those swarmer or supersedure cells, or you can buy a queen from a queen provider, and you would slide them a queen in a tiny little cage, and then that's a quicker way to do it. Sometimes they do fail to breed. Like I said, they get eaten by a bird or whatnot, and that's how you can do it. The harder you split the hive, the less honey you're gonna get, but you can split them pretty hard. I split some of my hives like up to 8 ways, I think is my record. I've taken 1 hive out of pollination. I've pulled a bunch of 4 packages off of 1 hive, and then I split them into 4 different nukes. So it's awesome. That's a really drastic exponential growth if that's what you're trying to do, but you won't get very much honey. So if you're trying to maximize the amount of honey you get, I would pull maybe 1 nuke out of these. So just 1 split off, and then you'll make a lot more honey that way. But I do recommend trying to split your hives, because hives will naturally die. Like, you're gonna lose probably 25% a year. So pull a split or 2 off every spring so you can keep your numbers up and then get lots of honey. Next slide. Overwintering, he mentioned a bit about feed. You wanna feed them in the fall. So best way to do it is just get like a gallon jug and fill it halfway, a little over halfway with sugar water. In the springtime, it helps bolster them as well, but in the fall for sure, fill that a little over halfway with sugar, and then hot water, and then just shake the living daylights out of it. And then there's various kinds of feeders you kind of explained. Internal feeders, they're just kind of like a jug that you slide in as one of your frames. Those are great because the wasps can't get to them. Nothing can really get there. They're inside the hive. But the ideal feeder, there's also like the front feeder. Did you show a picture of those? The mason jar? Yeah.
It's on another one.
Yeah, those are fun because you can like look out the window while you're drinking your morning tea or whatever and see how much your bees have eaten. It's kind of fun, but the ideal feeder is a top feeder. The reason being, in the winter, the bees won't eat feed under 50 degrees. It's just too cold for their little bodies, and they get like a brain freeze because they're so small. So a top feeder, it's on top of your beehive, and the warmth from the beehive rises up and it keeps that feed nice and warm. So it can be negative degrees outside, but the heat will still keep the feed warm enough that the bees will eat it.
It's that mason jar one
Yeah,
that I
exactly.
showed.
Keep the sugar water unfrozen.
Yep, and not just unfrozen, warmer than 50 degrees, and they'll keep eating it. Another way you can use is a sugar board. I don't use them personally because it's not applicable in my situation, but for backyard beekeepers, this is not like your standard Langstroth, but your Langstroth will have a wraparound lid very likely, and you can take your lid and flip it this way, mix a little bit of water in your sugar to make it kind of sticky but not too liquidy, and just fill your lid with kind of that little bit flowy sugar. Let it dry for a couple days, and then as you go into the early fall or late fall, just put that lid on top of your beehive. And then all winter long, your bees are gonna come and munch on their ceiling. So they're not gonna run out of feed. They'll have more carbohydrates, and that sugar board will dry out your beehive, which moisture, other than diseases from the mites, is the #1 thing that will kill your bees in the winter. The reason being, a beehive, they stay pretty warm, but as you step out of the shower, like you're pretty cold, right? But as soon as you towel off, you feel warm. The moisture in their hive, as they respirate or whatever, a little bit of snow might get in and melt. That'll make them really cold. So if you use that sugar board, that sugar will absorb a lot of the extra moisture and keep your bees warmer. There's also a quilt board, like you literally just put a quilt on top of the hive, or wood chips in a little dish with little holes poked into it. That'll help absorb some of that moisture. Moisture can definitely be a problem. In fact, I even will sometimes stagger my boxes in the winter a little bit. I'd rather have more circulation in there than less, even though it lets in some of the cold air, because that moisture can be a problem. I don't know if you guys have seen on Facebook, there's ads for a hive heater that you hang off the side of your beehive and you face it towards the sun with a black plate. The sun will hit that black plate and suck up the warmer air and it will drive out the cold air out the entrance. I tried a couple this year out of curiosity. They worked great. They're kind of expensive though, so that's the downside. Oh, and then you can feed them pollen as well. You can just buy synthetic pollen online or from a local bee store. And overwintering bees is pretty good. Something fascinating, if you have a bunch of bees hives like this in the winter, a strong beehive, the snow will melt on the stronger hives. So I'm not sure what this picture's showing, but maybe it was a fresh snow. When I go out though in the winter, some of my hives will be totally stacked high. Those ones probably died, and others will just be none on there. And I'm like, oh, those are my good hives there. So kind of a fun little thing to see.
So do you insulate your hives?
Sometimes, some people will wrap them with the tar paper. Some people will put, what's it called, styrofoam on it. And it's a good thing, but it also keeps in moisture. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. If you keep the moisture off your beehives, really, that's probably gonna be enough to keep them healthy, from freezing, I should say. The number one thing that's gonna kill your mites in the winter, other than the moisture, is the mites. People will say, oh, my hive froze to death, but then I'll get in their hive and their cluster's only about yay big. There's only that many dead bees in the hive. Whereas before it was, big old box of bees. Meaning, I had a lot of people who used Apivar, those strips that had this happen this year. The strips are kind of working, and so their hive didn't completely die in the fall, but it didn't work that well. So the bees were kind of dwindling, dying here and there. And so by the time they got to the winter, their big warm cluster was only about yay big. And so it wasn't enough bees to create a critical mass to keep the bees warm. So again, it all comes back, hammer your mites, and you honestly probably don't have to insulate because there'll be so many dang bees in there that they'll be fine. But the moisture is a problem. That might have been the last slide.
Yeah.
Is that it?
What's that little thing in the corner? The brown wood thingy with is that them feeding?
That's a pollen patty right there. That's your synthetic pollen.
Okay.
So you can use synthetic pollen all year, by the way. It just depends if you want to put it in there or not. I was looking at one of my apiaries one day, and there was, they look great, lots of brood in there, they're doing a good job. And I came back a week later, and they were like munching on their brood, like a bunch of their brood was half eaten, and they're pulling it out and they're chewing on it. It's like, why are you guys eating your babies? This is like, what the heck? So I went and called an old timer beekeeper, old gray guy. And he said that the pollen that we have these days, there's so many pesticides in it and herbicides and fungicides. It's just not as good as the pollen of the days of yore. So he said, throw some synthetic pollen in there. That'll help their nutrition and it will clear that problem right up. I did that and they were great beyond that. It's not real common, I don't see it often, but if you throw pollen patties in your hive, it's definitely gonna do them some favors. Good stuff. Like this is this and a liquid sugar feed is like a bee printing machine. Like if you really want to crank the honey, throw pollen patties in there, throw sugar water in there, and honey's worth a heck of a lot more than sugar. So it just becomes like a honey and baby bee printing machine. It's really good stuff.
So pollen, can you buy it off Amazon?
Yep, just synthetic pollen patties. And there's all kinds of different kinds. Bees are really lazy. They won't go very far for pollen. So your brood chamber is gonna be right here. If you put your pollen, like over here, honestly, they probably consume the section that was here, but I would not be surprised if they just didn't even touch that. It's weird. So put your pollen patty, ideally you have your Langstroth box here. Shove your hive tool in the middle of the box, crack them open, smoke them with your smoker, that tool over there. So like they disperse a little bit, and put your pollen potty right in the middle of the boxes because that is the very center of your brood chamber. If you do that and come back a couple days later, you won't even know where the pollen patty went because they will have consumed it and turned it into baby bees. It's same thing with frames. Like if you take a frame of pollen and move it to the outside of the hive, usually with your hive configuration, you have your 10 frames here. You have your brood chamber, which is gonna be kind of like these 4 here. Your pollen is gonna be largely on these 2 frames, and then your honey will be on these frames. Out of curiosity, I moved my pollen frames out here to the outside where my honey frames were and left them there for a while, and they just didn't touch them. Like, they're lazy, they won't go the 2 frames over to grab pollen. It's weird. So keep that pollen tight against your brood. Yeah, any questions?
One question. So when we harvested our honey, we had help. We had it done with bees before, but I was kind of disappointed with how many bees died in the whole process.
Uh-huh.
But is that common?
Yeah, squishing bees is part of the game, unfortunately. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
No, just lying all over the place.
On the ground?
At night,
What you?
thinking that they're going to be docile.
Oh, no.
You took them out. And
No.
put them in
They don't
the shed,
like it.
Because it was being rained in the
Yeah.
shed. And the next morning, I couldn't believe how many bees were just lying around everywhere.
Yeah.
We were, I think, I don't know, if it was
We
the
just didn't know
attachments.
what we were.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I made lots of mistakes when I started beekeeping. So, good question. First of all, don't beekeep at night. I have to, unfortunately, because I'm a commercial beekeeper. But generally speaking, bees are ferocious at night. You can have the most calm, happy bees that you don't have to wear a suit with some of your bees. They're so nice. Then it becomes nighttime. You get into them, and they just become mean buggers. The reason being is they have evolved to expect predators at night. Skunks are big predators for bees, by the way. So the skunks and sometimes raccoons will come and scratch at the front of your hive to eat bees. The bears, not that we have bears that are a problem, but they're evolved to be scared of predators that come at night. So when the sun sets, get out of your bees and do it during the daytime, because you'll be surprised by how your docile bees will just turn mean at night, which is not a problem because just go sleep at night. Like take the night off and get in your bees in the next day.
So then you're just pulling the honey trays is what you're doing.
Yep.
And then you're puncturing them with the tool.
So what I do, if you have, what I like to do is you have your bottom box, your second brood box, and then your honey frames up here. Pop the lid off and shove your smoker underneath the lid and just smoke them a whole bunch. And then put the lid back on, go on to your next hive, smoke that one, go to the next one, smoke that one, and do that a couple times. And by the time you get back to this hive, the bees aren't gonna like that smoke and they'll be driven down. Then you shove your hive tool in there, pop that box off, set it aside, and then you can pull the frames out one by one. They are gonna be heavy if it's a good honey flow. A good frame like this can weigh like 20 pounds. I've seen some that are like 35 pounds because the brood frames will keep pretty small, but a honey frame, I don't know how to hold this. I've seen them draw them out like that fat before. Like this, they just will draw and draw and draw. Draw is, by the way, the term when they're pulling wax away from the frame, they're drawing honey out. So if you get a good deep box full of honey, any guesses how many gallons of honey you'll get from 10 frames deep box? Any guesses?
A gallon?
5 gallons.
From that one?
From 10 of these in a box. 5 gallons. So one box, you're like, oh, I'll get a few gallons. 5 gallons from a big box like that. It's awesome.
What
So
about harvesting this one? You're smoking those in the top, and then how do you?
oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Huh. Queen excluder. I don't run top bars personally. A lot of people love them. Oh yeah, look at that. There's your internal feeder. That's what I was talking about earlier, these internal feeders. This is cool. Honestly, probably similar though. Looks like your side here is where your honey super is gonna sit. How do you harvest your honey in these?
Well, this will be my first year.
Oh,
But put the nuke over here,
okay.
and then I'll start. Then you go ahead and keep adding your super over here.
Yeah.
So just depends how many frames you're gonna want to have on that.
Personal opinion, this is called a queen excluder. You explained these, right? Mm-hmm. I like to call them, and people in my industry call them honey excluders. The bees don't like to go through these excluders. The queens are not that much wider than the honeybee, and so they had to make them pretty small. If you sit and watch your bees, they'll sit here and they'll fumble around for a minute before they can finally squeeze through. So I don't even use these. Your queen is gonna try to maintain the integrity of her brood chamber. Like she's not gonna be sporadic and spread brood out all over like a crack addict. She's gonna keep it nice and concise in one spot so they have a better ability to temperature control that chamber. So I wouldn't really worry about it. They're gonna put the honey away. The main reason you would want to do that is just medication. Like say you use the Apivar, then you wanna know when you use the Apivar because you don't wanna harvest the honey frames that you had on when the Apivar was active, like in the spring or fall. They're gonna be pulling honey in all year long. So when you use the Apivar in the spring, they're still gonna be put honey in, and you don't wanna just accidentally grab like a frame out that was when the Apivar was in, or the Apigard, which is that tin, because then your honey's gonna taste nasty. So that's perhaps the downside of using the top bar. The Langstroth with the honey super, it's easy because you do your medications, you when they're 1 or 2 boxes. And then before you put your honey super on, you get all your meds in and then you pull them out. And so you know when that 3rd box or 4th box, whatever goes on, your bees have been treated and the treatment's all dispersed within the hives. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
I just had a question about your pollen thing that you could buy.
Yeah.
Are those flavored?
Are they what?
Are flavored.
Uh,
You know, bees go and they, like, I'm thinking of the bees in Hawaii, you know, they go to the lehua tree. And
Yeah.
The honey tastes like lehua.
are you talking about
When you do that with the artificial ones, do they sell them whether
Yeah, that-
orange flavored or peach flavored or whatever? I don't.
That's a very good question, and quite an astute observation. I will say, Hungry Garrett has forgotten to pack lunch once or twice and had to resort to eating a pollen patty or 2 in my life. They're surprisingly not bad, actually. Synthetic, I'm not exactly sure what goes into them, but there are different varieties of them. There's one called a global patty. It's probably the apex for pollen patties, the 15% global patty, meaning 15% of the bulk in that patty is natural pollen. They'll use a pollen trap, commercial beekeepers will, and then they'll harvest pollen from whatever source, I'm not sure, probably like canola or clover most likely. And then they'll blend that up in with, I believe it's cornstarch and sugar, a lot of it, some other proteins, and they'll put that in. The more natural pollen that's gonna be in your pollen patty, the better they're gonna do. That said, I use Man Lake patties. They're a heck of a lot cheaper than those global patties. They work pretty dang good as well. So,
What was the name again?
global patties and the Man Lake patties.
M-A-N-N Lake.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Man Lake. They're
That's like where I got that.
yeah, they're like the premier bee supply company of the U.S.
Lake, not lake.
Yeah, Man Lake. Yeah, they sell a bunch of bee stuff.
So our hive also got really, really aggressive. Couldn't even be in the backyard
Oh, really?
and stuff. And so
Were they fine before? Like, explain.
Yeah, they were fine before.
Uh huh.
And then he was saying, I think you lost your queen, and they turned aggressive. But
Yeah.
I don't know, you know. So I just the reason for that.
Yeah, so we backyard bee suppliers, there's only a handful of us in Utah, but a lot of the big honey guys will spec into really aggressive bees just because aggressive bees are kind of the lazy man's way to get a lot of honey. So if you're gonna buy bees from a backyard supplier, they're very likely gonna be very docile bees. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple scenarios that will make your bees aggressive. One is bad weather, nighttime, and losing your queen. Also a bad honey flow is kind of the 4th. So if they all of a sudden get mean, it's probably a sign that there's no queen in there. Smoke helps a lot with that, but yeah, I would, if you have 2 beehives, just grab your frame of eggs, make sure your frame has eggs on it and slide it into that hive. Once they've started building a new queen, they're gonna chill out because then they have hope again.
Okay.
But
Or buy a queen.
yeah, or buy a queen, yeah,
$50
exactly,
and
exactly.
introduce her.
Yeah, exactly. And if someone's trying to sell you for a queen more than $50-$55, don't buy it. It's a ripoff. So 50 to 55 is kind of the going rate for a queen. I've heard people spending $100 on a queen, and that's just, crazy.
Put out a little commercial about yourself if you want more business.
Oh yeah, I'm a commercial beekeeper out of Utah. As I said, Spanish Fork, Utah. I run bees between Willard and then all the way down to Payson area. So one of the largest bee suppliers in Utah. Again, I have hundreds of customers a year. I probably move over 1,000 packages and nukes every year. These are typically $155 if you want to get a package. You already explained how to dump them all in and all that. So really great way to start a beehive, especially if you feed them sugar water. Packages are great. Nukes, it's a little late to start packages this time of year, but I'm selling nukes right now, making them. And nukes are easy. They have your 5 frames in here like I explained earlier. You just take this puppy. Did you already explain how to put a nuke in? Yeah?
Yeah,
We just
get the 5 frames in there
Yep.
and then
drop them in to, this is a pretty cool
So
unit
it
here.
comes with the 5 frames.
Yep, and typically they have 3 brood frames and then that pollen and honey resource frame on the outside. That's what they are when I make them. Bees do whatever they want. Sometimes by the time I get them sold to someone, there's 3 honey frames in there because I ate all the pollen, or there's 5 brood frames, or there's way too much pollen. So they do whatever the heck they want to do, but that's how we make them so they have a nice balance. And then as far as the brood frames, that brood chamber, there's typically a capped one, which was that picture with the queen's cells hanging off with the little fingers, that's a capped frame. That's the final stage that they go in while they're pupating into a adult honeybee. And then we have a mixed frame, meaning we have a frame that's about 50% capped, 50% open. Open is when the queen has laid an egg in there, and it's between being an egg or a little grubby larva. Milk brood is the term, like they kind of just swim around in their own little food in there. So you'll see a frame and it's really milky looking, and it's all just baby bees. So, and then the final frame is an open frame where we'll have just freshly laid eggs, a little bit of milk brood, and then some open. Because if you give them all capped, the new queen we give them, if she doesn't have a little space to lay, then they don't like her very much and they won't accept her as often. So that's how we make them. By the time you get them, who knows? Because they do what they're gonna do. Oh, $195 is what, yeah. I just kind of go the going rate with Utah. There's guys that are cheaper than me. There's guys that are a lot more expensive than me. I kind of just scroll and see what the going rate is that year, and I just sit in the middle. Bees, you get what you pay for. There's a few discount suppliers, and I get a lot of their customers. And there's guys that are really expensive and people that go with them every year because they have just like wicked awesome bees. So shop around, but I am one of the biggest suppliers for a reason. I sell awesome nukes for just the going rate and packages. Oh, this doesn't go in here, huh? That probably should put that. Oh yeah, contact. If you guys want to write down, I am 801-791-1476.
You have a website?
I don't. My fiance has been pestering me about that. I need to make one. I have an Instagram, but no, I don't have a website. But yeah, Garrett, 801-791-1476. I sometimes take a day or two to respond, as you guys might know, because I'm so slammed, but yeah.
Is Instagram just under your name?
Instagram is Bartons_bees. If you just look up Confused Beekeeper, I'll pop up. Beekeepers have their own nickname. Mine is Confused Beekeeper. Bees do weird things, and as experienced as I am, they still confuse me once in a while. So I was in a hive the other day, and they're supposed to be making hexagonal shapes, and they made squares through half the frame, like flipping squares. I was like, this is nuts. What are you doing in here? So that's my kind of moniker in the industry.
So I got my, just so you know, my package I got from him last year, or a couple years ago, and I got a nuke from him as well. And like I said, I like his package, because he gave me 2 different breeds and everything, so I was experimenting to see and everything, and they did great, you know, and everything, so.
I appreciate that. Which breed did you like more, the Carnies or the Italians? The Carnies? Yeah, really? The Carnies tend to be like real docile.
They were, and they also, I mean, last year I got 125 pounds.
Off of one of them?
Jeez. And that was just on
4 or 5 gallons, isn't it? Holy crap. Yeah.
So everybody should know that Be Ready has purchased this equipment here, and we also have a nuke that we'll be adding to this in the next day or two. So anybody who wants to come over and take a look at it afterwards, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to come over to the world. You come over to the world headquarters of Be Ready Academy.
Right on.
So what question do deer bother these things?
Oh yeah, a good question. I've never had a problem with them. A couple of my places that keep bees, there's a lot of elk that hang out in the area. I've never seen a problem with it. Cows will knock them over. I've had a horse tear a hive open and just literally eat the hive. I was rather upset at that horse, needless to say. So if you're gonna keep them in like a cow pasture, put up a live fence. Bears are a pretty big problem. Not where we're at, but my cousin, he runs 1,200 hives up in Idaho. He'll lose like 40 or 50 hives a year to bears. They'll just decimate an entire. You go in there and it's like World War III, just carnage strewn halfway across the valley. So, but we don't really have to worry about bears right here a whole lot. We haven't had a bear sighting here in quite a while, like a few years in my opinion. Or, yeah.
In very general terms, what's the time commitment?
How many beehives you're asking here? Because it's my whole life, but one. Okay. You can put a bee in a beehive out and check them 2 or 3 times all summer long. I'd say that's a minimum. You can put them out and then go check them, a month and a half later, put a box on them, wait a month and a half, put another box on them, and then put your Apigard on in the fall. And you don't have to harvest honey if you don't want to. So if you some people just want to drink their morning coffee and watch the bees fly in and out. It's what I do. It's a lot of fun. And you can leave the honey on them. If you want to harvest the honey, that's a bit more time intensive. It depends on how many you have. When I was a kid, we ran like 40 hives, and I think honey harvest took us 2 days. But we'd also harvest like 500 gallons of honey. So if you're just doing like one hive with your little hand spinner, you could probably harvest in 3 or 4 hours. 5 gallons, 6 gallons. Yeah.
And the mites aren't going to kill them over the summer.
Nope. They'll outrun them. Yeah.
Cleaning up, I think, took us longer than actually the harvest itself.
Yeah.
Cleaning up all the stuff. You got the bees.
Yeah. When you're done harvesting, put your spinner outside, put your tools outside, your hot knife, and just let the bees clean it all up for a couple days, and then you just have to go hose it down to finish it up. The bees will clean up most of the sticky mess.
But it's not a weekly, I gotta go do this chore.
Nope. No, bees are
Swarm season.
Yeah, during swarm season, like you want to make sure they're not swarming. Take a peek at them, but bees are largely self-sufficient. Adding more, you want to give them more space so they don't run out. They will become honey bound if you don't give them enough space. Your brood chamber will be like right here, and then they'll start to backfill the brood chamber with honey. So the spot that has brood will just shrink more and more until there's nothing in there, and they'll just be so productive they have no room. So you want to go in and make sure they have enough space, but they're not going to fill up a bee box in a week. It takes them some time. So just go peek at them. I check my hives like once a month in the summertime. Sometimes over a month. Sometimes I check them twice a month. It's not very often. And then the fall, I'll hit them probably with a gallon of feed once a week or once every 10 days. So go in there and give them that pitcher of feed. Throw their medication in, but really beekeeping is a fairly hands-off hobby. When I first got into it and had 12 hives, I would check them 3 times a week because it was fun, but definitely didn't need to do that. So.
As a new beekeeper, where do you put your hive?
Great question.
In a backyard?
It's best with, in the ideal situation, sunshine in the morning, shade during the day, and then sunshine at night. Because bees, when it's...
Wait a minute, sunshine at night?
No, sunshine
in the evening, I mean, yeah, not at night. So just like underneath the tree works pretty good because then that sun hits them and it warms the hive box up and then they get going quicker. When it's cold, it's kind of like a winter morning for me. I like to stay wrapped up in bed. But once that sunshine hits the box, they warm up and they start getting going out of the hive, orienting. And then in the middle of the summer, they do get a little hot. It never gets hot enough here that you have to really worry about the bees like roasting to death. But I noticed they do a little bit better when they have some partial shade in the middle of the day. But I have got plenty of yards, apiaries, where they're just out in the middle of a field and they sit out and they rock and roll all summer. So it's not a huge deal. I like to keep them like 5 to 10 feet away from walkways and structures. The bees that we breed are docile, but they're still bees, and there's so many bees in the hive. Statistically, one of them might get one of their genetic wires crossed, and then you might get 1 or 2 pissy bees that are gonna go let you guys know if you walk by. So I probably wouldn't put a beehive any closer to a walking path as this chair here. And then they don't like lawn mowers. So if you're mowing your lawn, when I was a kid, my dad had like 40 beehives right across the lawn. I'd mow the whole lawn, and then that last section about from here to the beehives, I'd put my veil on and then go mow this section by the bees, because sometimes they hang out in the grass and you mow them over and they get a little annoyed. So that is a downside. If you can keep them away from lawn mowing areas, I keep some bees at my mother's house and the lawn mowing company. They ignore that little patch around the beehive, so it's my job to mow it. So.
I happen to let my neighbors know. They love the hives, the bees, just because their flowers, their trees, their gardens do so much better.
Yeah.
And stuff. But I do let my neighbors know, because if anyone's allergic, like my daughter-in-law, she's deathly allergic to bees. But she'll sit out in the backyard. We have this towards the back fence and everything, and it's on a little bit higher tier, and their flight path is like 6 feet.
Yeah, they'll fly up.
And so we sit in the backyard, and I haven't yet. I mean, my kids, the tramp literally is from there to maybe here, and it's that's about 4 feet high on the left. And my grandkids will be out there and they've never had a problem. Once in a while they'll see a dead bee on the, on the.
Or a kid steps on a dandelion and they get stung, so.
But haven't had any stings yet.
Yeah, if you get stung, it'll be a kid stepping on a dandelion. Water source is another one. When I was a kid, we had our beehives here and a pond here. And you watch the bees were just going crazy back and forth. So we ended up building like a little fountain right by the beehives, and there was a lot less traffic to the pond because the bees are gonna go to a nearby water source. So putting out a little like dog bowl with a couple rocks in it helps a lot. Any final questions?
Rocks on us,
If
they
you
don't.
have a neighbor that is against you having a beehive, that told you the city won't let you have it. We mentioned that we were looking to get in a hive. It's like, what would you? It's not true.
Yeah, I just bought a house in Roy and I keep beehives in the backyard. I'm not supposed to, but yeah. Cities are pretty lax. My house in Ogden that I've been living at for a few years, I put some beehives right by the sidewalk. It was up a little bit, but the city came and wrote me a write-up with a other for breaking a city law, and it was like beehives, smiley face. And so I moved them to the other side of the fence and they never said anything else. So give your neighbors a bottle of honey. It goes a long ways. And overall, bees are great. Like you said, they help so much with the ecosystem. The flowers bloom. There's always going to be like Mr. Scrooge that hates fun. Sometimes you run into those guys, but overall,
Those ones don't tell you got it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Overall, beekeeping is about the coolest hobby there is. Something I love about it is it's really great for community. It brings people together. A lot of my customers are kind of like the very hippie liberal types. And then there's others that are like the uber conservative, like doomsday, or the hippies want it for like the environmental aspects. The conservatives want it for like, food storage. But we all have this common awesome love for bees. And it's so awesome. Just all the walks of life that we come together for these beautiful insects, and they really are. I know that was a lot of information, but remember, beekeeping is a blast, and this is about the coolest stinking hobby you guys can get into, so enjoy it. It's great.
What's a round number for an initial investment?
Oh, good question. Your bee box rig is probably, if you have your standard Langstroth, it's gonna be typically between 150 to 200 bucks. Can't be Amazon prices, unfortunately. Your nuke, that's gonna be another 195 to 200. So that's a little less than 400. Your bee suit, this piece here, I like the half suits. Is that what you have here?
That's the house.
Yep, these are way better in my opinion. I get mine from a company called Glory Bee. They've got amazing ones and they're like 65, 70 bucks. And they're good for a long time. It's sturdy material. Gloves, you can use garden gloves. I would not use the cloth gloves. And if you use garden gloves, don't use like used ones because they're smelly. For some reason, those like smelly cloth garden gloves you guys are gardened in, they just like latch onto those and sting you a lot on them because I think they're so smelly. So get a nice pair of leather gloves. They will not really bug the leather too much, and they're resilient. You don't need the bee gloves, but you can just buy leather gloves. Bee gloves are great though, so call that another 50, 60, 70 bucks. Other tools and whatever, throw in another 100 bucks, maybe 50 bucks for your hive tool smoker. So what are we looking at? 500 bucks probably. Your honey spinner, if you get a hand one, you can get one for like 150 bucks. Those are the main essentials. It is an expensive hobby to get into, but the nice thing is once you have the smoker and the spinner, those kind of harvest tools, that's a one-time investment. And so if you want more bees, you just buy another bee box and it ramps up from there. As far as paying it off, I don't know if you guys have kids and or grandkids. When I was a kid, we would put a honey stand in front of our house and my little sisters would wear like a little yellow tutu dress and we would slay it. We'd bring in like $300-400 bucks in an afternoon. And that was back when we were slinging honey for like $4 a pound. Now it's 15. Friend of mine, he sells honey 3 times a week and he brings in about $3,000 a week slinging honey and just working 3 days a week. So if you do well with the bees by killing your mites, kill those mites, you'll get a lot of honey. And as an adult, I don't really enjoy slinging honey, but that's why having kids or grandkids, especially little girls in those little floofy dresses, they'll just slam on their brakes to stop and buy honey. And you'll pay your hobby off like that. And then everything on top of that, my dad would take a cut because, That's his honey, but we kids, we would make so much money, a couple $100 to a kid back then. It was awesome. So it's an expensive hobby, but if you play your cards right, it pays for itself quick.
How late in the year will you have the boxes of bees?
July 4th is typically when it's too late to start nukes. And for being at the seminar, I give you guys a $10 discount if you say you're at the seminar. Why not? So I'll go $185 on those if any of you guys want them. Just mention this seminar. Code word.
Be ready.
Be ready. There we go. So that's all I know you guys were here.
I need to pick up my new premise.
Okay, yeah, I got a bunch ready. I just gave Aaron one. So I think that's all I got.
So Mike, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Michael, you want to come back up here real quick? Because he didn't get a chance to give you his contact information if anybody's interested in.
And if you have any other questions, or you have, any questions about one of these hives, phone number is 801-836-2159.
Did you build this hive?
I built it.
That's awesome.
Your name again?
Mike, last name's Kammerman, Kammerman.